Amerindians, a traditionally nomadic people, have always lived here in complete harmony with their environment. But over the last 60 years, they've become sedentary, a change in lifestyle that's creating problems for the forest. These communities grow corn and manioc using a slash and burn technique. They clear fields by cutting trees, then burn them so their ashes fertilize the soil. When farmers are nomadic, this practice is harmless to the forest. But when it's applied to the same area repeatedly, it's destructive. The continuously bared soil no longer has time to regenerate. Soon, a new parcel needs to be cleared at an ever-increasing pace. Amerindians are attached to this ancestral custom, which is key to their self-sufficiency and fosters solidarity between families by honoring mayuri, or the value of working together.
When we cut the trees, it's wasteful. There's wood that's good for making lumber or building canoes, but we waste it with slash and burn. We do it to grow our fortune. Our manioc is our money. We plant bananas, cassava. We plant everything there. Everyone has to clear their field. I've got mine, my wife, my daughter, my son. Without the forest, we've got nothing. It's hard.
The problem of slash and burn practices is nascent in Amerindian territories, and it's become a real concern around cities. In order to reduce the frequency of cutting as much as possible, the Institute of Development has undertaken to increase soil yield. Because if the people are becoming sedentary, they may as well make the most of these new agricultural zones. But optimizing the plots obtained by slash and burn techniques means adopting innovative farming systems. Vincent Heslin's mission is to put these solutions into practice around the city of Maripasula in the west of the country.
Slash and burn is above all an itinerant farming technique. In other words, traditionally the people moved every 3, 5, or 10 years. They change. That's a system that works very well as long as the population is small. Today, the population of Maripasula is doubling roughly every 5 years. In 2010, it was 5,500, and today it's 9,700. Faced with this population growth, the only solution is to transform slash and burn into something permanent. There's manioc, obviously, because that's part of the farming culture. But also other kinds of vegetables, aubergine, cabbage, pecai, or bok choy, Indonesian vegetables. Crops that diversify local food cultivation and diet, which therefore benefits the people and improves production and yield of their farming practices.
Mrs. Deal, a farmer in Maripasula, agreed to follow Vincent's advice.
Did you come to clear the land?
I'd love to, but I've got work first.
She diversifies her crops.
Corn?
Yes, that's corn.
When did you plant it?
The day I burned.
Right afterwards?
Yes, it didn't burn very well, so I replanted.
It looks nice now, but when the rains come, it's going to be hard.
Among the burnt logs, we find banana trees, peppers, pineapples, manioc, aubergine, and watermelon. Over a dozen different vegetables in all.
Here we see what really is the most traditional practice. And it's an effective one in terms of making to do with what you've got, being able to grow something in a tropical zone. You cut, you burn, and you've got clean soil that you can plant in easily. All that without any fertilizer or farm equipment.
Mrs. Deal knows that in a few years, the soil of her plantation will be too depleted. So she'll have to use green manure, which is more fertile in the long term than a bed of ashes. But although the technique has proven effective, it's far from being the obvious choice for farmers.
If we use green manure, in other words, sow plants intentionally to create vegetal biomass that will create fertility, it works very well. We know how to use it. On the other hand, it means you have to work your field to sow something that brings you absolutely nothing. You aren't going to harvest something to eat or something to sell. However, you're going to produce fertilizer that will generate the land so you can grow good crops afterwards. But that's sometimes hard for farmers to accept. To hear, go toil away in your fields to grow something you won't be able to harvest. Instead, just leave it all on the ground. Then later on, you'll be able to plant. A lot of our work is setting an example, showing them how these practices work and why they should use them.
Meanwhile, to improve short-term production, Vincent encourages farmers to keep small nurseries at their homes in the village. Soon, they'll be ready to put their already robust plants in the ground on their parcels of cleared field.
This is aubergine. That's celery.
And back there?
That's peach palm. And that's rambutan.
These little gardens, nurseries if you will, are going to allow farmers to take better care of their crops. They're close to home, so they can be tended to every day, make sure no insects are attacking, keep track of watering and disease. This means that when they're taken to the field that's been cleared by slash and burn, the plants are directly stronger and more robust. In the end, this significantly increases the yield of the slash and burn field. For farmers, it helps generate their revenue in a different way, because it's a small surface that's carefully tended and monitored, and creates revenues that are just as large as if a hectare was cleared for manioc.
Although Mrs. Deal has been won over by this method of farming, the greatest challenge Vincent faces is convincing other inhabitants of the notion of forest protection. They've always lived here and see the forest as omnipresent, pervasive, and above all, eternal. But this false perception is at odds with the rapid deforestation currently threatening the rainforest. Adopting practices that correspond to this new reality is a long-term endeavor. Although it may not be feasible to abandon an entire tradition, major results can be made by modifying just a few habits. Notably when it comes to felling trees, those cut for the slash and burn fields or else for lumber. Instructors from the Guiana Amazonian Park teach a new felling technique that brings loggers a 30% gain in the volume of usable wood. After checking the natural lean of the tree, only 5 cuts with the chainsaw are needed. A hinge is sawed between 1 and 2. A back cut heel at 3. The tree is cut in a safe manner and falls with lower risk of splitting.
If felling is done correctly, you get a lot more wood. If there are splits, you lose a lot of pieces of wood inside. Before, they used to fell trees without sounding them, without sticking a probe into the base to see if it's hollow. If the tree's hollow, we leave it standing because it's a seed tree that will provide seeds for the future. We don't cut it down. Before, people would systematically cut trees without checking whether or not they were hollow. They would fell 5 or 6 trees to get one good one. There were lots of cracked trees, lots of waste. Now they fell a lot fewer trees with this technique, or they will do since they're still learning. It's mostly a matter of breaking old habits, and that takes time, even with professionals.
These internships are intended for Amerindians. Carpentry, woodworking, construction. There's no shortage of projects in the community. Though they don't provide a quick solution to deforestation, the dialogue helps raise awareness among the local people about the need to protect their heritage. For centuries, forest communities have used wood to record their history. Craftsmen today use natural pigments to fashion the Amazonian creatures that people their legends.